And then we've got many other extraordinary guests lined up. If you want to know who's coming to the show, you can keep tabs with everything we're doing at middlegradeninja.com. Tonight, I couldn't be more exciting. We are welcoming one of my most favoriteest authors of all time and our, to date, only returning champion, our very first guest, the guest without whom none of this would be possible because all the other authors only ever said, yes, I'll come on your show because Laura Martin came on and did such a great job. Esteemed audience, put your hands together wherever you're. Maybe you're in your car, maybe you're at the gym. Stop what you're doing. Quick round of applause for author Laura Martin. Laura, how are you this evening?
I'm so great. Thank you so much for having me back again. It's an honor.
I couldn't be more. You know, I talk to you. I never get tired of talking to you. We are friends and critique partners in real life. So I never, more than a couple of months goes by without me being able to see you.
Mm-hmm. It's great. It's funny because when I was dreaming about getting published, I was stalking your blog years and years ago. I had no idea we even lived in the same town. So it's a very small world that now I'm in the same writing group as you.
Well, you heard an esteemed audience. Follow your dreams. Read my blog, move to my town, join my writing group. You too can enjoy the bliss that is currently being experienced by Laura Martin.
Right down your street.
Laura, remind esteemed audience who the heck you are. For those poor fools that were foolish enough they didn't listen to the first episode, give them a quick rundown of who you are and how great you are.
All right. So I am an author, but prior to being an author, I was a 7th grade language arts teacher here in Indianapolis for about 6 years before kind of taking a break to do the stay-at-home mom thing and the author thing. I have 3 young kiddos, 5, 3, and 1. So life is busy right now, and then I do my author stuff basically when they're sleeping. My first series that ever came out with HarperCollins is called The Edge of Extinction. It's a 2-book series, mainly because I wrote 1 book and they said it's too long for middle grade, break it into 2, which is why the first book has a major cliffhanger ending that even I hate myself for a little bit. And then it finishes up with Codename Flood. So those are my first 2 books that came out. And then my, not most recent, because Hoax for Hire comes out tomorrow, but Float was my next one, which was kind of different from Edge of Extinction. These were kind of stories that I'd heard my whole life my dad tell. He had this kind of wild and crazy childhood, so I handed it off to a kid named Emerson who happens to float. And then my newest book, which is why I get to be back today, is called Hoax for Hire. And it's the first book that you ever helped critique and kind of help on its way to its publishing path. So this one is really exciting. I'm excited for it, mainly because I feel like I've waited forever for this book to hit the shelves. The way publishing works, we had this one finished over 1.5 years ago, right? Like the last time you saw this was almost 2 years ago. It just takes that long to kind of get it through the pipeline. But Hoax for Hire is about a family who has made their living pulling off these hoaxes. So my idea actually started when I was at Butler University. I had this idea of like, what if you could contribute every awful thing to one family? And I originally thought I was going to write this story about these like villains, you know, this like society of villains. And then it kind of morphed into, well, what if every kind of weird, unexplainable Bigfoot sighting, Loch Ness Monster sighting, what if there was one family behind the scenes kind of pulling those strings? So it's a story about 2 boys, and they are both in the McNeil family. They're brothers. And the older brother, Curtis, is all in on the hoaxing lifestyle. He wants to be exactly what their family legacy has kind of led them to be. But Grayson wants out. He thinks it's weird that they have Bigfoot feet in the basement. He doesn't want to have this life of lies that's not exactly legal. The problem is they get pulled into this huge sea monster hoax that their dad sets up, and then something happens to dad, and they kind of have to swoop in and figure it out. So that's Hoax for Hire. It's much more similar to Edge of Extinction than I would say Float is. Float's kind of my departure book. That's a little different. My Edge of Extinction fans, I think, are really going to like Hoax for Hire.
Should we say that Float is up there?
I would call it my funny book. Like if you're gonna pick a book because it's funny, that's the book that you pick. My other ones have some humor in them too, but they're much more action adventure driven. Where Float is much more character development, humor driven, I would say, which is different for me because I would not consider myself a funny person. My husband always tells me you're a lot funnier when you write than in like real life, which I don't think is a compliment, but it's also true. I'm funny when I can think about it for a really long time.
I disagree. You make me laugh on a regular basis. So, although I've got to say that Hoax for Hire is I've definitely laughed more than once before I was done. So there's plenty of humor in this book as well as action and excitement, and the opportunity for us to talk about all kinds of weird stuff.
Oh, I know.
Should,
your book. When I pitched it, I just saw it on your face. It's like, how did I not think of it? Because you're so into all that stuff. I know one of your main questions you ask everybody is, have you ever seen a UFO? So the fact that I did the book about all the weird things, it should have been your.
Crushed me. I was like, no, it's the book I didn't know I was gonna write, and now I'm not gonna. In a way, it's good that you and I are critique partners, because life's too short to get to all the ideas I want to do. So if you keep doing the books that I really wanted to write, but I just didn't have time to get to, I at least get to help you launch them into the world a little bit and get it. And if I can't write it directly, at least be adjacently part of it.
You said the book Big Magic. She talks about how she thinks ideas are transferable. So maybe you transferred that one to me by hanging out in the same writing group. Who knows?
Yeah, because there's not anything on Hoax for Hire that I don't talk about on a regular basis in real life. People think this is
all this stuff.
I really am that far out there. In fact, let's start, because we've been friends for a long time, and I've never actually asked you directly. Laura Martin, have you ever seen a flying saucer, and do you believe in them?
I have not, but I wouldn't want to live in a world where there's not the possibility of one, if that makes sense, which is one of the big themes in the book. I love the idea of the mysterious being out there, that we haven't figured everything out, especially in this world where, you can Google an answer in 2 seconds. I want there to be mystery in the world. I want there to be monsters and lakes and creatures we haven't discovered yet, and possibly UFOs out there who are going to pay a visit. I don't want to live in a world without mystery. So yes, I believe that there's so many possibilities. There's so many things we have not figured out yet.
Oh, they're out there. And now that you've published this book that does indeed have a flying saucer, I've got the art cover, so you can't see it as well, but it's got the flying saucer hanging up there.
Keep the flying saucer on the cover.
You are now easy pickings, madam. When the aliens are looking around, they're, all right, who can we abduct that no one's going to believe? You're for sure on the plus column now. So.
Got myself.
So people will just say, well, she must be marketing her book. That's why she's saying she's been abducted. And who will you be able to tell?
The author's note, I talk about how I hope that someday we, get a really good picture of Nessie, or we find a Bigfoot. And I said, I'll be right there handing out my bookmarks, because girls got to publicize books somehow. So I'll be there going, hey, do you want to read more about this? I have a book about that.
You have the most unpredictable book tour coming up that you could possibly get to.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding, but it'll always be relevant, because somebody's always going to be seeing something odd.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go down the list a little bit. Okay, so UFOs, you haven't seen one. How about cryptids in general? Have you seen a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch, anything?
I have not, but I grew up. My family. My great-grandfather built a lake home up in Monticello, Indiana. It's not really a lake, it's a dammed-up river. It's muddy river, but my entire childhood I grew up with my dad telling me stories about the giant catfish that live in there. And I think it was part legend, part just scare your kid, So I think that's one of the things I was always I kept pushing him for details, well, how do you know there's these giant catfish? And he had these stories about how, oh yeah, they pulled out one that was bigger than a man, and all these stories about these giant catfish. So just that mysterious element, I guess, I've always been intrigued by. So I remember the first time I heard about the Loch Ness Monster, I was like, wait, there's a monster that lives, it's just that mysterious. So no, I've never seen a cryptid, unfortunately. Wouldn't that be a great little headliner in my book? But that's also part of cryptids, is so very few people have seen them, and the people that we have eyewitness accounts sometimes aren't believed, which is why the whole waters get really muddy when you get into cryptozoology, which made research really tricky when it came to researching. When I did the dinosaur research for Edge of Extinction, it was much more cut and dry with what scientists agreed on for certain dinosaurs and what they might look like, sound like, that kind of thing. Whereas you start researching Bigfoot and you have a very small percentage of reliable sources out there, and a lot of kind of people just guessing and formulating, and it's hard to figure out who's real and who's a hoax, which was funny because I'm writing a book about hoaxes. So the research was kind of like falling down a rabbit hole a little bit.
It's kind of, I mean, you win either way, right? Because like if it's a hoax, great, you need to know more about good hoaxes. And if it's not a hoax, great, you're curious and you're looking for the monster. So either way, it's win-win, right?
Stories I came across, I worked into Hoax for Hire. So many of the cool cryptid stories that I heard, like the U-28 monster, and my favorite is the Silver Lake monster that I kind of worked into the book, that it was this real hoax, that this guy on Silver Lake, a hotel owner, did this huge hoax with the sea monster to bring tourists to his town, and it worked. I mean, the town went bananas. And then a few years later, his hotel burned down, and they found the remains of this sea monster creation in the attic, burned to smithereens, which is one of the reasons why in Hoax for Hire, they say that they never get rid of their hoaxing stuff. They just store it because they're worried about that happening again. And so they I weave that into the whole family's history. But this idea that people are just intrigued by the unknown. I mean, if you mentioned the Loch Ness monster, people go, to Scotland just to visit the lake where there might be a monster. We're just intrigued by that kind of stuff, which is really fun.
Saw a documentary. I can't remember the name of it because God knows. The documentary is, I don't even know if that's the right term. Crazy YouTube video is what I watched. But it was about Bigfoot specifically. And at one point they interviewed a guy that was not that into it. They mentioned to him, like, hey, we see that you're always the last on the herd when we of the group. That when you go out and you look for, they call it squatching, when they go out and you're looking for the Sasquatch. And he's like, yeah, well, the way I figure it, if we find a Sasquatch, that would really be something. But worst case scenario, I'm out here with my buddies every weekend and we're camping, and it's great. Yeah. Yes, that is the right attitude, sir. You're having your best life.
Absolutely. Well, what's funny is I wasn't, just like with Edge of Extinction and dinosaurs, I wasn't super into cryptids prior to writing this book. I kind of came across it by accident when I was teaching. We had this whole nonfiction curriculum that we were teaching called Plugged into Nonfiction, where I had a class of 30 kids, and they gave me 7 books of each book. And I was supposed to use that to teach my kids how to read nonfiction, and they weren't supposed to read the whole thing, and we were only supposed to spend a little time on it. And I didn't think it was the best idea in the whole world, to say the least, but they didn't ask my opinion. And a lot of the books were kind of iffy that we were given, except for this one, which is called Tales of the Cryptids, which is my absolute favorite. You can actually still see I've got my classroom sticker on the binder. I hijacked this one from my classroom, and I still have it. But it's the science behind all the mysterious creatures that may or may not exist. And when we cracked this book open and we started talking about the history of Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster sightings, my kids just like perked up. Their eyes got wide and they were hooked. So I shut my classroom door, and instead of spending like 30 minutes, we spent about 3 days on this book. Looking up the wacky YouTube clips, we watched things on, Lauren Coleman, who's kind of like the lead expert on cryptozoology. We watched him do interviews about Bigfoot, about Loch Ness monster. We were doing all these debates. And in the middle of teaching this book, I had the idea for Hoax for Hire. Now, I wouldn't write it for like 5 years later. So I just wrote it in the margin of my teacher planner. I told my kids to do an activity. I went over my desk and I said, what if one family was responsible for it all? Like, what if one family was behind all of these things? And then that idea kind of sat on the back burner. I wrote Edge of Extinction, I wrote Float, and I was going, okay, what am I going to write next? And then I pulled up I have a accordion file of all my random ideas that I just shove in there, not organized at all. It's a hot mess. And when I need a new idea, I just start pulling out ideas. Sometimes it's notes on my phone. I open that up and I have all my random ideas in there too. And I found that one. I was like, oh yeah, I had that really cool idea about cryptids. And what's funny is I've actually contacted Kelly Milner Halls, who wrote the book, and said, hey, so you wrote the book that inspired my book. Can I send you a copy? And so we've had this whole email exchange. And she's so excited to get a copy of the book because I mentioned this book in the author's note about where the idea came from. And so she's going to send me her new cryptid book that's coming out. So it's exciting too. So I'm like, maybe someday we can sit on a panel together and talk about weird things. You can come too. You'd fit right into that panel.
I'll just be in the crowd cheering. That's going to be a heck of a show. What, well, somebody pointed out to me once that and I want to get back to your idea folder, but first I want to ask you about this. Somebody pointed out to me that if they went out and they caught Bigfoot, it would just be like an extra big, monkey or an ape that was, they'd find out things about it, they classify it, and it would just be something you'd go visit at the zoo.
Yeah.
Except for the crazier theories where it's like there's a whole secret society of them out there. They have, like Wakanda technology that's more advanced than what we have. I mean, if you really dig down the rabbit hole, that stuff gets really nuts. But assuming basically what looks like is it the Zapruder film or is that JFK? Whatever the film is of Bigfoot that started the whole craze where it's kind of maybe a guy in a costume, maybe not, but he's walking a little bit funny.
Right.
But if they caught that and they put it in the zoo and you took the kids on a field trip and they saw it later in the day, it would they'd be almost bored with it or they'd be on their phones kind of half glancing on it. So what is it you think that when it's still unknown, when it's in a book about cryptids that so captivates young minds?
I kind of disagree with that. I think if we did catch a Bigfoot, I don't think it would be ho-hum. I don't think it would be kind of Jurassic Parky where you know how they got bored with dinosaurs, like, oh, everyone's seen a dinosaur, it's got to be bigger and better. At least not initially. I think everyone would be over the moon about finding a Bigfoot. Plus, there would only be one. It would kind of be like the pandas in Washington, D.C. Like it's one of those kind of special things. But as long as they're a mystery, for example, in cryptozoology, the coelacanth is the cryptid darling. It's a creature that was supposed to have been dead since the age of the dinosaurs until they spotted one on a fishing boat. And so it's kind of held up as this pinnacle of like, look, sometimes we find them and they're still around. So I don't know. I don't think Bigfoot will lose his appeal, especially since I don't think you'd catch enough Bigfoots to like
Big feet high
zoos with them. It's a one and only thing. Plus, I can't picture him doing well in captivity. But it's like when when the Tasmanian devils died out. I think things can be special in their own right. I don't think it would ever be ho-hum. I don't think, if we caught, Nessie, I don't think anyone would be like, seen it. I think there's some things that because of the legend surrounding them and because of all these kids who've grown up hearing about Bigfoot, it would be a wow type thing. And I'd be contacting the zoo to see if I could sell Hoax for hire in their gift shop.